card I'm gonna color in is the card that I did on the smooth drawing paper. So I'm gonna be using drawing supplies like colored pencils and markers. Before I start coloring, what I did was I got my card, I drew my design with a pencil first, and then I traced over those pencil lines with a thin black Sharpie. So the next step that I can do is I can just start coloring it in. I'm gonna make sure and take my time. I'm coloring in one direction, so I don't have any white spaces. Let me show you what you can do. Let's say I colored too fast, and then I realized, oh no, that looks a little bit messy. I need to go back and polish it. So if you're trying to fill in your white spaces, all you have to do is go back over it and just kind of slowly color in those white spaces. If you take your time, those white spaces will get filled in really easily. I can also color in with markers. Since all of my spaces are pretty small, I'm gonna be using the small markers, but if I had some bigger spaces, I could use a bigger marker to fill it in just so that it doesn't take so much time. So I'm gonna very carefully color it in neatly. I want you to notice I'm also honoring my lines. I took a lot of time to draw all of these lines. So I'm gonna color each of these individual spaces a different color. I wouldn't just color over a whole big part of the card one color, because that would kind of take away from all that hard work that I did. I would keep coloring my spaces with either colored pencils or markers until my whole card was filled in. I wanted to show you a trick for using markers on top of colored pencils. So I've already very neatly colored in all of the spaces on my card. And now I could take a marker and I could add more designs on top of the colored pencil. You could do dots, you could do lines. It's up to you what kinds of little designs you want to add on top of your colored pencils, if you like. It's an option. Next, I'm gonna use the metallic colored pencils to color in my black card. Before I got the colored pencils out, First I got a black card and I used a pencil to draw my design from my sketch onto my card, and then I traced those pencil lines with shiny metallic Sharpies. I want you to notice that I only traced the lines. I didn't color in any of the spaces with Sharpie. I just traced my lines with Sharpie. So the way that you're gonna use the metallic colored pencils is pretty much the same as how you use regular colored pencils. You wanna make sure that you're coloring it in neatly. You're gonna make sure your pencil is going in one direction. If you color it in kind of messy and you get a reminder that you need to fill in those little black spaces, you can go back over it to color it in neatly. With metallic colored pencils, the harder that you push down, the brighter that shininess will be. So like with the silver, if I just color it lightly, it's not gonna show up very shiny. But if I press down hard, then you're gonna see it show up very shiny. You're gonna color in all of the black spaces the same way that on the white card you would color in all of the white spaces. So I would also color in all of my background spots too. I am almost done coloring in my metallic colored pencil card, and I wanted to show you a trick for coloring in the background space or any spot where you have a lot of space you need to color. So you want to make sure your pencil is a little bit sharp. It doesn't have to have a pointy tip, but it does need to have some space on the edge. And then instead of coloring like this, which would take a really long time, you can hold your pencil on the side and just very softly color it in using the side of your pencil. You still want to make sure that you're coloring it in carefully. Like I'm making sure that my pencil isn't going inside of the Sharpie lines, but it's going to go a lot faster than if I was coloring with the pointy side. This is a good trick that you can use for even regular colored pencils or watercolor pencils. It works for any kind of pencil. Coloring using the side of a pencil is always a lot faster than coloring using the tip. Coloring your card with watercolor pencils is the same as coloring with any other kind of colored pencil. The one thing you want to check is you want to make sure that your colored pencil has a paintbrush on it. Sometimes regular colored pencils end up in the watercolor pencil cup, and if you use a regular colored pencil, it's not going to turn into paint whenever you paint over it with water. So I double checked, I've got my paintbrush, which means I can go ahead and color in my last little shapes, and then I am ready to paint. The first thing that I want to show you is what not to do. What you don't want to do is get a really big paintbrush that's bigger than any of the parts that you're trying to paint in. And what you don't want to do is paint over the whole card all at once. Those colors all got mixed together. The colors aren't very bright anymore. It's kind of disappointing. So what you want to do is you want to look at your brushes and you want to pick out a brush that's small enough to fit inside of the parts that you want to paint. And then you're going to paint just one color at a time. So first I painted my purple, and then I'm going to rinse out my brush so I don't have any more purple paint on there. And then I can go back and paint my blue. When you rinse your brush out in between colors, you're making sure that those colors are going to stay bright, that they're not going to mix together. It's going to make your artwork look amazing. Sometimes your brush dries out and you might need a little bit more water. If you get too much water on your brush, it could make like a puddle and it could get a little messy. So just a little water is good. And then I'm ready to paint the background. So I would just keep painting and rinsing my brush out in between colors until I was done painting the whole card. If you finish all 3 of your cards early, then you will get to do a special bonus card, and that bonus card is scratch art. So what you're going to do is you're going to use this wooden stick to scratch your design into the card. And when I scratch that design in, it's going to show the color underneath the card. This one is glitter, some of them are rainbow. There's all different kinds of cards. I'm really taking my time because I have no way to erase it. If I make a mistake, I just am gonna have to embrace that mistake. There's not really anything I can do to take that line away. What I could do is I could turn that line into something else. One thing that you might want to do is you might want to color in certain parts of your card. And the way that you would do that is by just using your stick and kind of scratching away very carefully. You want to stay in the lines, scratching away the top layer off so that you get a solid spot of the layer underneath. I could add some little dots by just scratching in little dots. Your card doesn't have to look exactly the same because this is kind of a different art supply. If I wanted to put more dots in than I had in my sketch, I could totally choose to do that. It might make it look more interesting if I have more details.